some fans from out my way, Altoona. You spent 7+ years out there with me in Altoona. Do you have any fun memories of being an announcer in Altoona?
Oh yeah, I mean just the way the crowd was like into the character, especially near the end. The Barbell Mafia was like over big time. That was like Zuboff and Calvin McGrath and Scott Fowler. And even like during the years, like when Dave Daniels was a babyface, him and Xander Graves, they were youth gone wild. They'd come out with the cute little young Roxy to the ring. The people would go crazy for them, and they'd hate. I remember the Authority, Trevor Michaels. He was like a commissioner. You had him for a while. People just hated his guts.
You told me one time about a story where we had a Wargames match. And the reaction, you want to share that one?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. There's like 4 times in my career where I don't know if it's like, I don't know if you could call it a ring announcer's high. I mean, the people are so intent in the match and so intent on wanting to hear what you want to say that it's just like dead silent heat. I don't know if I can explain it right, but 2 of the 4 times it happened to me was at your shows when you had the War Games shows. Because always when the War Games, no matter where it is, WCW or KCW, it's always somehow, some way that the luck of the draw that the baby faces are always outnumbered. They're outnumbered 2-1 and 3-1 and then 4-1. And sure enough, at your show, like every time I'd be like ready to say the next one, I'd be count 5, 4, 3. I'll say the next entrant will be representing, and then if I'd say the heel faction, and all the people would like, oh no. But I think at one time it got to like 4-1 or something, and there was still maybe one more heel to go in, so it could have been 5-1, and it was just like dead silent. You couldn't hear a pin drop, And then when I announced that the next one coming up was a baby, and people exploded, And that happened twice in two straight years during your War Games. And only 2 other times that ever happened to me, like working other groups that I had.
What were those matches?
Well, one of them was on a Bobby Fulton show. He's like one of the most underrated promoters. He had a thing where we were getting some word back from some fictitious commissioner or something. I had to pretend like I was going to the back and taking a phone call from some fictitious named Joker commissioner because Bobby Fulton was actually wrestling 4 of the 5 matches on the show, so he actually had to wrestle in 2 matches in a row because he was the one that had to put on the Cowabunga, the Ninja Turtle thing on his head to do the Ninja Turtle because Brian Hildebrand couldn't make it. And so he had to wrestle like a single match and then a special challenge like right after that. And they pretended like the referee wouldn't let him do it. So I'm going to the back and pretending I'm, talking to a commissioner. And I come out and I'm like dragging it out, like building to a thing here. And I said, the commissioner's word is final, and the commissioner's word is, and then it's like 5-second like pause, and people like dead silent, and I said yes, and this people just went nuts. I don't know, it might have been 600-800 people or something.
Right.
That was one other time, and then the 4th time is when I was ring announcing a WWF show. One a few times. It was at Struthers, Ohio, at the Fieldhouse, and they gave me the list of matches. Usually during the show, they usually had the main event on before intermission, so they can build to something for the next show. So they gave me the list of matches, and it was one of the show I was announcing for the next show was one of the few times the Fabulous Freebirds wrestled in the WWF because they were only around like a very short time and they got pissed and left. But yeah, I think I announced we have a 6-man tag match. It's Ken Patera and Rex and Spot the Moondogs taking on, and then I was like just like silent, and people just waited like 5 seconds, and I said the Fabulous Freebirds, and they just went, there was like maybe 3,000 people went like nuts.
Yeah.
They really wanted to see them badly.
Okay, well let's move forward. I do this in almost every interview that I do, called word association. So I'm going to pull out some names. You can say 1 word or 100 words, or tell me a great story about them, whatever comes into your mind. Let's start with Dominic DiNucci.
Oh, Dominic DiNucci, great guy. I worked a lot of shows. He promoted a lot of shows. I refereed for him, ring announced for him. Even though I was like a heel fan, it's hard to dislike Dominic DiNucci. He's just, you wouldn't find a guy would say a bad thing about him.
Okay.
He should be in the WWE Hall of Fame, by the way. I guess they'll probably finally put him in that. They have like a Legends Hall of Fame now. I hope they put him in it before he dies, because he's like going on like 87 or something. He's 86 now.
How about Kenny Duggan, Lord Zoltan.
Zoltan, one of the biggest phonies I ever met in wrestling. Phony is a $3 bill.
Really? Why do you say that?
He's just a guy that just uses people, manipulates people. I used to travel with him from around 75 to 80, and it just got to the point that, I just had to go to shows myself. I was just losing my self-respect, just going with him. He spin doctors, manipulates. You can't believe what he says. I wouldn't have nothing to do with him. Anything he promotes. I find out things like cheating you on little things like gas. I know he told one promoter he drove and he's taking the money for gas, and I got paying me part of it for he cheats you on little things. So what's he going to do on bigger things? Like running that Deaf Skull show or something. Who knows what the hell he did with that? Okay. I don't trust anything that guy says. If I see him in a show, I'm polite and be professional. But I be polite and beware. I don't want him nothing to do with the guy.
Does he know you don't like him?
Oh yeah, he knows. He's
okay.
He'll be real nice to me in front of other people, but he's no good.
Okay.
I feel badly that for his wife and kids that he's having health problems now. But I want him nothing. He's phony as a $3 bill. Don't believe half of what he says.
Okay.
He books people on shows. Not to help the promoter. He's getting them, when I hear he gets the money from the promoter and doles out nickel and dimes to the guys. And he's booking guys for the promoter that are good for him, not for the promoter's bottom line. I hate to be negative about somebody, but that's a guy I would recommend beware. If he beats this thing he's doing now, beware.
Okay. What about Shane Douglas?
Shane Douglas, I ring announced probably his first 25 matches. I bet I ring announced at least over half of them. He was one of Dominic's early students. I still run into him from time to time. I've been doing a lot of Bobby Fulton shows out in Ohio for him, and he has Shane on there a lot. I'm just happy Shane made it big. He got screwed big time when he was in WWE. They stuck him with that dippy Dean Douglas gimmick, and then he had to deal with Razor and those other idiots. Shawn Michaels and Diesel were screwing him around. And then when he went later to WCW, they did a thing to him. One of the worst ways you could bury a guy. I don't know if you remember this incident. They put him with Torrie Wilson. Mm-hmm. And then they did a vignette where they were in a motel room, and they show Shane Douglas sitting on the edge of a bed, and Torrie Wilson's there looking sexy, when she was at her sexiest. And he's sitting there he's real sad, hinting that he had erectile dysfunction. How can you make a guy look like a bigger loser when he can't get it up and go with Torrie Wilson? But I think he had to take it because he had what I heard, a 2-year contract for $1.2 million or something. And I guess he didn't want to blow that, so he had to take the shit that they put on him. He's a guy who should have went a lot farther in wrestling, but the politics held him behind.
How about Jim Miller?
Well, Jim Miller is one of the most underrated people in the history of independent wrestling. I know a lot of people don't want to hear this. Well, let me start from the sort of the beginning with him, so I can include. I found out about PWX from Joe Perry. Joe Perry told me sometime in 1995 that this guy's starting up at the Eastland Mall, and Joe Perry's an eternal optimist. He's telling me this. This guy's going to have TV. He's going to have radio. He's going to have this and that, and and he wanted to know wanted to know if I wanted to get in his ring announcer. I said sure. But don't get your hopes up, Joe. I heard this from so many people. They're going to do this and do that, and they'll run 1, 2, 3, 4 shows with diminishing returns But Jim has a business mind. I know when I listened to your interview with him recently, the bottom line is most important, and Jim understands that more than any of these other promoters around here. Jim is not worried about pleasing Wade and Dave or putting on matches that get 4 or 5 stars, so the keyboard warriors and the internet marks, all ready to shoot an orgasm, because they like the match so much. The bottom line, Jim has never had a shortage of wrestlers. The 23 years he's been running, at the different buildings he's been. They never had a shortage of guys. There's always people that want to work for him, and if people don't, if you don't pay him, if they don't get enough money, they can always go somewhere else. Jim, I'm impressed with his business manner. But during the first 5 or 6 years, he didn't really know the workings of getting people to run his dressing room. He got burned by a few people badly in those first 5 or 6 years until Quinn took over. Once his future son-in-law Quinn took over, it got to be the egos were like run out of time, and he had people, I guess, like Crusher to help him, Paul Atlas, Brian Anthony, people to keep like the egos out of check, so the people aren't booking like for their own ego. And he had a few people, Jim had a few people that screwed him in those first 5 or 6 years.
Do you want to name any names or some of the guys that made
Well,
it
the
through?
worst one is right before their TV era. Like Jim was like, he was like so worried about having like the whole area to himself. So he sort of like, I used to joke at the time, if you remember world history, when Chamberlain like appeased Hitler in 38, well, what Jim did in order to keep Norm Connors from running shows, he let him have the booking right before when he was like just starting the TV. And if that wasn't bad enough, they had like a 4-man booking team. They had like 2 other people, like 3 of the 4 bookers shouldn't even have been there. The only one that really belonged was T. Ranchula, and he kept getting outnumbered by the other 3. And the other 2 guys were like 2 guys. They're like, I mean, they were decent wrestlers, but they're like bottom third of the card guys. They weren't like main event guys. It was like Boomer Payne and JB Destiny. And the problem is those guys are like booking everything like around them, like they're the stars, the top of the show. Like I remember Norm brought in this Lou Marconi, who's a very good wrestler. I don't know if you ever met him.
I have not.
I mean, I'm nothing against Lou, but having Lou like he was just copying everything off of ECW. Like ECW had Taz like tapping out everybody. He was. The submission machine like Taz. So they had Lou Marconi like tapping out like Paul Atlas, Brian Anthony, all like the top stars. And he had a thing with T. Ranchula where he had T. Ranchula tapping out because they were copying something that they did with the pit bulls on ECW, where the one pit bull submitted his match in the ring so they wouldn't beat up the other pit bull outside the ring anymore. So they had T like caught in some like simple hold for like 5 minutes that he couldn't break. Their top guy like a biker, a guy that's like 100 pounds less than them, having him like submit so they wouldn't beat up the Black Widow, like was T's wife at the time, outside the ring, and like other things. And Norm had this these other 2 guys on the booking team. He would put them like near the top of the card, but every time there was a confrontation, like if you see Norm now, Norm's probably in the greatest shape he's ever been in his life. You could tell he's like running and probably doing cardio and everything. But Norm back then was like a Pillsbury Doughboy. Like when he was young, he was like bulbous and not an athlete. And Norm was like wrestling in main events on shows and then anytime he had a confrontation with the other 2 guys on the booking team, I remember he stretched like Boomer Payne like on one show. The Boomer's like maybe 230 pounds or something. And Norm had him face down on a mat screaming for his life. He's getting stretched. And this JB Destiny, he would like bitch slap him around every time he had like a confrontation. I remember another thing he booked was they were bringing in guys from ECW at the time. When you bring in guys from like other promotions and stuff like that, you put your own guys over them to enhance them. You don't bring the jokers from the outside in and have them beat your top star. And what they did on one thing, it really like pissed me off. You remember Stevie Richards? Mm-hmm. Like Stevie Richards, he was just an independent guy at the time. They were using ECW. He wasn't very little better than what was at PWX. He's just an indie guy that Paul Heyman was using ECW. And remember how he used to dress he looked like Daisy Duke in drag.
Shorty shorts and a half shirt.
Yeah, he looked like a guy like doing Daisy Duke in drag. And then every week on ECW around that time, he was in Raven's group. And Raven would just like bitch slap like Stevie Richards around like every week. And they had that guy coming in and knocking out T. Ranch. I think he knocked him out with a super kick and pinned him right in the middle of the ring. And to make the thing worse, because on ECW a lot of times they shook hands and thing of respect. So T. Rancher just got his ass kicked by a guy dressed in drag like Daisy Duke. And he goes and like shakes his hand in respect like after them. I said, oh my God, I mean, and Jim didn't realize. I think other people were complaining too, because when I complained to Jim about it, I said, "You see what he's doing to you?" And Jim said, "Not you complaining too." So that made me realize that other people were probably like bitching too. And they finally got rid of him a few months later. But really, that's when they started their TV. And there's a saying: there's only one time or only one opportunity to make a good impression. And they went on TV with all that like dog and pony bullshit with Norm and Boomer and JB. And people watching that, they probably lost their audience forever. Even though they got on TV on and off here and in the coming years, people probably saw that like look like backyard or bullshit, and that probably hurt their TV for years to come when they got on and off the air. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's change gears a little bit. How about I think the first place I ever met you was in Cleveland. I could be wrong about that. for Gmo.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Okay. Tell
When-
me, how about that name, Gmo?
Well, Gmo shows now there aren't quite as good as they were when he used to bring in the APWF guys. Like a lot of people in Cleveland like shit on Gmo shows now. I mean, well, he has like a little bit. They do have a little bit of a good reason because he uses a lot of guys that are barely trained and don't know what they're doing now. But back then, I mean, Gmo shows he used to bring in like good guys in from Detroit and everything. Some of the best indie guys out of Michigan, and then he brought in a lot of the APWF guys where I met all you guys. And well, I knew Chris Lash from before because I did a couple shows when Chris Lash was working with PWX, like before he went with the APWF. Yeah, Gmo shows were like really good for years, and sometimes he'd run in conjunction with JT Lightning and use him and like some of his guys. I really enjoy Gmo. In fact, I'm the day after this interview we're doing now, I'm going up there for him tomorrow. You know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't expect to see a lot of great wrestling, but I have a lot of laughs and a lot of fun. You know, and he always takes care of me. You know.
Okay. How about JT Lightning?
Oh yeah, JT Lightning. I say of the three top groups I ever worked for, I'd rank JT Lightning's. I have 17 and a half years with him.
Wow.
Cleveland All Pro Wrestling from '93 till 2011. I worked with him 17 and a half years. I would rate him the number one promotion I ever worked for the Indies of the three. With PWX second and KCW second and PWX third because JT asked me to work every one of his shows. I couldn't make every one. I probably did 95% of them, and you asked me to work every one of your shows, and I probably did like 95% of them at least. Well, PWX, they'd use me. I probably worked around 50% of their shows over the year, at least 50%. But you know, they'd not use me for a few years and bring me back. But JT's my favorite of all time. You know, he's a guy who was like honest to a fault. I mean, he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because he just like tell the truth of what he thought right to their face. You know, he had like no like tact or a nice way of saying it. He just like say it right to your face. And whether you liked it or not, I mean, he was being truthful, but he did rub a lot of people the wrong way. But yeah, over the year, his shows I used to look forward to because a lot of times I'd work KCW and the from 2002 to 2009. I'd work Saturday night in Altoona or Tyrone, and then I'd go home get like 2-3 hours sleep and have to do an afternoon show in Cleveland the next day, then go to work on Monday. Yeah.
Well, I used JT a little bit, and I thought the same thing. He was honest to a fault, and I have nothing but respect for that. I try to do that myself, so I really enjoy that. I know you have a great story about Sabu.
Oh yeah, people always ask me about it. This and the Ox Baker story. They ask me about
okay,
too.
Well, let's start with the Sabu, and then we'll jump into the Ox Baker.
Okay, well, the Sabu story was there was this guy Rod Destiny used to run west of Cleveland in like Lorraine. He ran this Eagles Nest place. It was like in downtown Lorraine, and he'd bring in a lot of these ECW guys. And he brought in Sabu like 2 straight shows. Well, the show before the show we're going to talk about Sabu. ECW, they don't care, about hurting anybody or anything. Yeah, he just all of a sudden like started throwing chairs around it, and he chased me all the way back to the dressing room, like whipping chairs like all his might at my back. I know one hit me in the back of the arm. I had like a big giant bruise for a couple of weeks. I'm glad he didn't hit the back of my head. I had a really, And then the next show was like a Monday night show. I don't know why they ran Monday night. It was like 1999. Raw was on and Nitro was on. They had only 100 people in the audience, and he's wrestling Tracy Smothers. And the promoter Rod told me he heard like Sabu, and he had a referee buddy like John Pee Wee Moore. They were down there at their end like smoking their herb. You could like smell it down there. He said he heard them. They were gonna like do something to me, like to watch out. And I don't know. I still have to ring announce the show. So the guys don't want to do jobs. So what happened was they went to a double count out. Even though I know it's a double count out, I can't just like assume from the back that it's double count out. I got to go pretend like I'm talking to the referee that he tells me it's a double count out. And what happened was as soon as I'm walking out, as soon as he told me double count out, and I barely got it out of my mouth on the mic, I could see a blur in my peripheral vision like coming toward me. Sabu like tackled me, but at least he had the nicety to like lay me like face down before he bladed me. Like all of a sudden I saw him taking that spike out of his boot, and he was pretending like he was like running that spike, but he actually like ran the blade like real light across my head, and I could see like my blood like dripping down. So I didn't get on my clothes or anything, but
Were you mad?
I don't want to like be a baby about it. I know Wally, Wally Klasinski. He was like really pissed. He wanted to go over, and I said, "Oh, just let it go. I mean, I don't want to be a baby." He didn't hurt me. It didn't ruin my clothes. It all dripped on the floor. Somebody brought out a towel right away. So I didn't get any blood. Ruin my clothes and Sabu, I shook his hand at the end of the show, and he said, make sure you wear a bandage on there the next couple of days, And people at work are, asking, why you got that red line like across your head? And one thing I was grateful for is neither one of them guys used a blade during the match. It was like a bloodless match. Because if they'd have used a damn blade that they used on themselves, I mean, I don't know if those guys got hepatitis or what the hell they got, if anything. I was like relieved that they used a fresh blade on me. Yeah.
Well, how about the Sox Baker story?
Okay, here's a story that people like to hear. I was reffing for Dominic DiNucci, Clarksburg, West Virginia, and Ox and DiNucci was the last match. So DiNucci didn't come back to the dressing room. I guess he was taking care of the money or paying the boys or whatever. So it's me and Ox alone in the dressing room. So I'm taking a shower, and I didn't realize that Ox was like watching me, and Ox is like saying, "Ooh, what big legs you have!" Because I used to like ride a big. One of those Roadmaster bicycles a lot, my kids. So my legs are a lot out of proportion to the rest of my body from pumping around that big bike on the hills of Pittsburgh for years. He said, "Ooh, what big legs you have!" And I'm thinking, because I was like bending over, like wiping the back of my legs. I'm thinking, oh shit, because he used to wear like pink nail polish and stuff like that. He acted like a little bit effeminate in some ways, even though he looked like somebody could kill the average guy. And I must have told that story like several dozen times over the years, and I remember I did a show where we didn't know Tito Santana was in the next row of lockers. So Seth James, you remember him? Mm-hmm. He asked me to tell that story again. He wanted to hear it, so I told the story as I told it to you now. And then Tito explained that Ox used to like work people like that. He was only full, and he had a wife and everything, and he only wore that like nail polish and stuff just to like work people. But
gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, if Ox would have got me down, I would have had to wear Depends the rest of my life. He would have like ripped me a bigger asshole,
Okay. On Facebook, you often post results. I know you have a whole stack of results from all these shows that you've done. Where did that start? Why did you decide to keep tracking all the shows that you did?
When I first started going to the arena, my dad used to take me from the very first show. He bought me a 25-cent program, and I didn't start writing the results in right away, but then later on I started, when they started letting me go myself or with my friends, I started like writing them in, and so most of the time I was like writing the results, and then later on, like you saw that article I wrote in Ring Wrestling. What started me on that was I would see there was never no Pittsburgh results in there, and I thought I would have started sending them in earlier to that magazine, but I thought you had to be like work for them and be a reporter or something, and so I just sent it in on a whim, and then some friend of mine called me and said, "You got an article in the Ring Wrestling." They didn't even like send me, they don't pay nothing for that agate print stuff in the back, and so I started like taking more notes at the show so I could do like a better. And even when Ring Wrestling, they went out of business. The wrestling aspect, the boxing magazine lives to this day, but the wrestling magazine quit in '79, and I think they just put out one like edition in '83 or '84, never put out another one. A friend of mine, Joe Shedlock, had a newsletter that won a couple of WFIA awards, Wrestling Fans International Association. So I started like taking notes and writing stuff for him for like 5 or 6 years till he like closed it down. Then after that, I was just in the habit. I was doing it at every show, taking notes. So even to this day, I don't go to any shows except the ones I'm working now. But I take notes. I try to get the time down. Remember, get the finish. Who pinned who, DQ, Connaught, and I have all this stuff in boxes, like the sort at home. So I've been like putting some of the stuff on Facebook. They got to try to get reactions from people, and it's like gratifying. A lot of people tell me, "Oh, that was the first show my dad took me to, or first show I ever went to." Yeah, it brought like a lot of happy memories to a number of people. Yeah.
You think you're going to be doing this for a long time yet? You still having fun with it as far as announcing?
Well, as long as my health holds up. I know I've been retired from the Postal Service. It's like going on like 9 years, and I've been like couch potatoing a little too much. I'm falling asleep in a chair at home. I don't know if it's just getting old or what, but as long as I can keep going and and feeling all right, yeah. And the thing is that people, if they still want me to do it, because I mean, I'm realizing I'm out of all the demographics that they want to attract. I'm like 65 years old. It might get to the point where they might say, well, we want a younger person or something. So I mean, I'll graciously say, well, if you need me in a pinch, I'll be there. But as long as people want me, I'm going to try to do it.
What makes a good ring announcer?
Well, for me is I've had no professional training or nothing. I'm just like a mark in the audience that just wanted to get a little closer to the, make a little money, get in for free, have a better seat. I tell people that ask me, I said, write everything down, get the information. Don't trust your memory, because you got people heckling, trying to break your concentration. And that's why I like to get early and write everything down. And so I have a security blanket in front of me to refer to if, some idiot's just like so loud and obnoxious that breaks my concentration.
We have covered a lot.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we sort of wrap things up here?
Oh, I don't know. I always say that the best wrestling fans in the world, the greatest wrestling fans of the world, are the ones that support indie wrestling. I mean, you have like the WWF when they had their ups and downs, their big periods. You got these people that come out of the closet. They're like fans for a while, and then they go away and come back. But the people, that support, you get guys around here like Matt and Kenny Tressler. They go to, they go to almost every show they can. There's like other people you see at every show. The champ, like a PWX, he's at every show. I mean, those are the real, true, honest to goodness wrestling fans, and those are the people I thank for coming to the show and buying tickets. That enable me to come and work the shows. And get, I'm not getting rich off of wrestling. The wear and tear of my car and everything, I'm probably still with a loss like over the years, but still, it helps support my wrestling habit. And I thank these people go to indie shows that helps, support wrestling, help these other indie wrestlers live their dream, whether it be for 6 months, a year, 5 years, or 10, they got at least they can say they did it and live their dream.
Okay, so well, I appreciate it. I know I've learned a lot. I hope everybody else that watches has learned a lot. Thank you, Hank.
Yeah, I might have ruffled a few feathers, but it's God's honest truth. If I did, too bad.
One of these days we're going to sit down again, because when I was preparing this, I thought there's so much I don't know about Hank that I'm not sure that I know the right question to ask. So I hope I asked you some good questions. Yeah. Maybe next time we do this again, you can say, hey, ask me about this. Let's get into this a little bit. Yeah. We'll do it again here maybe in 6 months or a year.
I'll be glad. Yeah, this is like fun for me.
Okay. Well, it's been great. I do appreciate it. We're going to close on this. Guys, girls, please stop having shitty matches. You are ruining my life.